Great. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch. We did. Yeah. Okay, moving on. We're going to get right through the court cards now because most of us are astrologers and we know about these people, don't we? So, Queen of Cups, Scorpio, water sign, I desire, Miss Intensity. There are 3 water signs in the zodiac. Pisces, I like to think of as the liquid form of water, deep, emotional, fluid, dreamy, susceptible to peer pressure. Cancer, I think about as ice. Their emotional side is kept under wraps. They may appear aloof, cool, withdrawn, even though they are very sensitive to underlying currents. Scorpio is like steam in a pressure cooker. They have powerful likes and dislikes and opinions. It is a sign of sexuality, desire, lust, very steamy people. They move in quickly on whatever it is they want. They're like great big Great Danes that will push you around until boundaries are set. Scorpios can be cruel, vengeful, secretive, and self-centered at times, at their worst. They love to be involved in long, passionate, and emotional relationships, but can be jealous and possessive. They are hardworking to the point of being obsessive. They may forgive, but they will never forget. They are like the elephants of the zodiac. The good news is that they are resourceful, they know a lot of people, and they make good networkers. They are determined, skillful, and magnetic. Scorpios are energetic, intelligent, talkative romantics, and good kissers. Their best quality is resourcefulness, and their worst quality is that they're just plain trouble sometimes. It is important to remember one thing about Scorpios. The scorpion represents the earthbound qualities of Scorpio. However, this sign is the only sign of the zodiac to have 2 symbols. Once Scorpio overcomes his earthly desires or her earthly desires, he or she has the ability, much more so than any of the other signs, to soar to great spiritual heights, as represented by the other symbol, that of the eagle. And you will see that our Queen of Cups has a double eagle head here. And she's sailing along on her water sign. These 2 gals look a little intense too, don't they? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're into the youths, or the 3rd degree of emanation. The youth of scepters is ruled by Sagittarius, IC, a fire sign. The happy-go-lucky one. Literally, Sag types are happy and lucky. That's me. In mythology, centaurs, like satyrs, were notorious for being overly indulgent drinkers and carousers, given to violence when intoxicated, and generally uncultured delinquents. In Greek mythology, however, Chiron, also a centaur, was intelligent, civilized, kind, and noted for his knowledge and skill in medicine. I liken Sages to college students. They party hardy, are not into responsibility of a family just yet, possess the optimism of youth, never want to graduate or grow up or even go to sleep because they're having too much fun. They're boastful and cheerful, independent, flirtatious, and dislike being confined to their dorm rooms or anywhere else, all while pursuing a higher education and relishing in the exchange of ideas. Given the opportunity, they would love to drive fancy cars, travel all over the world, eat at fancy restaurants, and gamble like there's no tomorrow. And yet they are always looking far into the future, knowing that someday, years and years from now, when they finally grow up, they will probably want to settle down and apply themselves to something, but not necessarily a family. They generally love the outdoors and sports. Their best qualities are that they make loyal friends and mates once in a relationship, and they are even-tempered. Their worst qualities are that they like to tease people, and they are blunt and tactless to a fault. They have the foot-in-mouth disease. Because Sagittarians also rule extended travels, import, export, and careers involved in travel, this card could also represent someone who is foreign born. Whoops. And there's really very simplistic symbolism here. You know, we do see our archer that is very symbolic of the astrological sign, and we have our sign up here. These two guys, we don't know what they're doing, really. We can't tell much about their personalities.
They're looking far into the future.
They're looking far into the future. The Youth of Swords, I use, are the key words ruled by Capricorn and the Earth sign. The go-getters. These folks are ambitious. Like the goat, Capricorn types endeavor to climb the highest mountain. They are goal-oriented and high achievers, expecting nothing less than perfection, especially when it comes to their own ability. They are patient, wise, and generally conservative in nature. They are systems people and great organizers. They can also be a bit shy and reserved. All this aside, Capricorn types love good competition and covet the honor, the trophy, the plaque, or the title. They are not generally motivated by money as Taurus types are. Somewhat like Taurus types, though, they are collectors, but their collectors are not stamps, coins, antiques, or stuffed animals for the sake of stuffed animals. A Capricorn will collect rubber bands, balls of string, brown paper, and little bits of this and that, because they may be able to use it someday. The best quality of this sign is that they are very diplomatic. They always think very carefully about what they are going to say before they say it, because they are sensitive to other people's feelings and they want to protect their own position on that mountain, parenthetically. Their worst quality is deceit, in that in any attempt to say the right thing, they often commit the sin of omission, thereby not telling the truth. They are also known for deceit, again, to protect their own position, reputation, and image.
Like Nixon?
Like Nixon. Nixon was good at that. So here we have this fellow, he's sort of looking ambitiously, wouldn't you say, at that throne? You know, sort of hoping and wishing that someday he could be there, and what might I do to sit in that throne? Sort of a seeker of being at the top, or having an ideology about being at the top or at the head. And this fellow looks like a warrior, and this fellow looks like a warrior, which I wouldn't necessarily put together with Capricorn.
It's like Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Like Mel Gibson. Okay, the Youth of Coins, Aquarius, Air, I know. Mental activity, and we talked about this earlier, always serves in positive and negative ways. In Gemini, it expresses as versatility versus a fickle nature. In Libra, it reflects as affability or being nice versus pliancy or never being able to say no. And then there is the need for approval. In Aquarius, it reflects as one who is idealistic, altruistic, and social on the one hand, and aloof, rebellious, and argumentative on the other hand. Aquarians are intelligent people, perpetual students who are very interested in groups of friends and social collaborations, usually for charitable or altruistic purposes. They are fascinated with psychology, usually have a unique or even eccentric personalities, and are interested in cutting-edge technology. Their key phrase is "I know," but it often expresses as "I know better than you." Altruism is their best quality, and argumentativeness is their worst quality. So here we see, obviously, a student constantly studying. And in these two characters, he may be studying that. Kind of looks like he is. And here we have a card that somebody's put together in Photoshop. And it has learning, knowledge, I can't make out what that, wisdom, yeah. So someone sort of made up a card there, yeah. It's not right.
Very pretty.
Whoops. Okay, I have to get my packet out of things we're supposed to be covering. The Youth of Cups, Pisces, Water, and I Believe. This is the last of the court cards. The Dreamer. Piscean types are sweet, sensitive, and unrealistic sometimes. They can get easily caught up in the world of creativity and imagination. Devotion in a ritualistic form is important to them. They like the candles and the crystal and the incense, and they love to dance and they love to move. They are emotional, sensitive, psychic, and intuitive. They can also be secretive or vague. Because of their sensitivity, they tend towards substance abuse to relieve the constant barrage of emotional input and or to connect with the divine or the otherworldliness of life. They are kind and unselfish. Their best quality is compassion. When they can focus, they are the ones who join the Peace Corps or the ones that donate a kidney to a stranger. Their worst quality is worry. They are always wondering when the other shoe will drop. And so here we have our Pisces fellow. He's got the cup, and he's got that little tie around his wrists that we saw in the martyr. It symbolizes the Piscean character and the secret sorrows that he bears. This little Pisces shows up as a fish coming out of the cup. And in this one, I don't know what's going on here. We have a cat.
He ate the fish.
Oh, he ate the fish. So the court cards in a spread mean that other people are involved in the decision, making the process or the outcome confounding for the querent sometimes, because it is going to be relying on other people's input. Sometimes they represent a spouse, sometimes they represent a person that's helping them, a partner. Sometimes they represent someone who is in their obstacle position.
The youths or all the court cards?
All the court cards, all the personalities. They're just the people in the question. Who's involved in this situation? Is it the boss? Do we have a testy boss? Do we have a neighbor who's giving you problems? That sort of thing. That's where they come up. And where they're very interesting in a spread is if they come up close to the Wheel of Fortune, because remember I said in the Wheel of Fortune means sudden change, and it usually comes on by a person. A person is a catalyst for the change. You look for a court card when the wheel comes up, and it usually will be that person who is the catalyst for the change. Right. And also in the Horseman, when you see court cards next to Horseman, it will be that person, a nearby court card, who is the thinker, the one doing the thinking. It can also represent, court cards can also represent an aspect of the querent's personality in that situation. And believe me, personalities can change. For example, if a woman is having trouble at home with her husband, she may be an entirely different personality than when she's out drinking with her girlfriends or having lunch with her girlfriends or at the book club. She may be somebody completely different. So with that, I'm going to move into the Horseman. The Horsemen correspond to the four elements: fire, air, water, and earth. In most decks, these cards represent people, and they are called the Knights. In the Egyptian tradition and the Brotherhood of Light deck, these are called the Horsemen. They may look like people, but they read like thoughts. The zodiacal signs most closely related to the Horsemen are Gemini and Sagittarius, because both these signs are associated with horses and thoughts, and we talked about this yesterday. In Roman mythology, the Gemini twins were considered to be patrons of horses and their special battalion of knights. Gemini rules education and day-to-day mental activity. Sagittarius, the center, half man and half horse, rules higher education and philosophy. Gemini and Sagittarius are opposite of one another on the zodiac. You can see that symbolized here, and then right across is Gemini. Thoughts come and go at a furious pace, and back in ancient times, horses were the fastest mode of transportation. Therefore, horses became the symbol of thoughts. C.C. Zane also points out that our thoughts have the ability to carry us away, just like Calgon. The horseman represents the thoughts of other people, and a horseman appears next to or close to a court card. We would interpret that to mean that the thoughts of the horseman are coming from the person represented by the court card, and that's what I just reiterated a few minutes ago. The spread does not involve, if the spread does not involve anyone else but the querent, then the thoughts belong to the querent. Reversals play an important part in reading the horseman, and these separate meanings will be discussed as we go through them. All of the key words for the horseman are in your handouts. So if there are no further questions, we'll move on with those individual horsemen. The horseman of scepters, also called the horseman of wands in other decks, or wands in other decks, fire sign, also known as the Knight of Wands. He represents thoughts of business, reputation, authority, hobbies, interests, or carries the thought of enthusiasm, right? And these are all the key words that we have for scepters. Reversed, the ideas are kind of half-baked. Go back to the drawing board. And this guy surely looks like he has a half-baked idea. So does this fellow. But they showed this very rapid movement for some reason. The horseman of coins, an air, also known as the Knight of Pentacles, which in most decks represents the element of earth, not air. Upright, this card represents thoughts of prosperity and enrichment and the idea of aspiration. Reversed, thoughts regarding poverty, lack, and despair. This card reversed could also mean what AA calls stinking thinking. That is just being negative about yourself and what you can or mostly cannot achieve. In other words, not being confident in yourself. So here, right side up, he stands for thoughts about prosperity and enrichment. And you can see that by the little money bag he carries in his hand here. Aspiration. Reversed, I can't do that. Not feeling positive about themselves. Horseman of Swords, earth symbol, also known as the Knight of Swords. These thoughts are devoted to the querent's protection, defense, and well-being, right side up. Also the idea of practicality. Reversed, this card represents dangerous thoughts, black magic, and sabotage. Somebody really doesn't like you. Scheming enemy. When applying to the querent alone, thoughts of depression or self-destruction. Clearly, there's a weapon in this card, so right side up, we can remember that this weapon is to defend someone and protect someone. Reversed, it's to hurt someone or to hurt themselves. Does that make sense? Yeah. Here we see swords, and they're just running around on horses and wolves. Horseman of Cups, the element of water, also known as the Knight of Cups. Somebody loves you. This is a very popular card. These are thoughts of kindness and affection. Kindness and affection in the air. heartfelt emotions. Reversed, somebody doesn't love you. Somebody is untrue or unfaithful or deceptive. If this card pertains only to the querent, this card could mean that the querent is moping around about their lack of love life. And so here he is on his prancing horse, bringing forth a cup. Reversed, obviously, he's not really sincere about his attitude or his expression of love. This card basically the same on a white horse depicting a hero type. This card is very clearly a card of romantic love or thoughts of romantic love. And that concludes the court cards and the horsemen. And now I'm ready to move into a big topic of divination. And I hope this answers some of your questions about how divination actually works. What travels at 186,172 miles per second?
Light.
Right on. Light travels that fast. And for the purposes of explaining divination, and as far as I know, the real reason, we will be using this paradigm to discuss the subject of how divination actually works. If you will recall, the first character in the major arcana is the Magus. He stands with his right hand pointing toward the heaven and his left hand pointing toward earth, symbolizing the first law of occult science, as above, so below. The dividing line, or the etheric boundary line, sometimes called the veil, between heaven and earth, so to speak, is the speed of light. So here I show the veil line, the boundary line. Up here is subtle energy, where light travels, where things are traveling faster than the speed of light. And here we have atomic matter, which represents us in the physical plane. So as above, so below. All that moves or vibrates slower than the speed of light is subject to time and space and resides in the physical plane. All that resides or vibrates faster than the speed of light resides in the astral or physical planes. As we humans on the physical plane are too far removed from the spiritual, unless we are highly trained to rev up our vibrational levels, like, say, the Dalai Lama, we will be talking about what happens in the astral plane, which is very close to where we are, right here. We have talked about the reality of duality yesterday when we discussed veiled Isis. As a matter of fact, we ourselves live in both the physical plane and the astral plane at once. Our subconscious, our unconscious mind, or soul, if you will, resides in the astral. What happens in the physical first happens in the astral. But through our directed thoughts and induced emotions, we can have an impact upon the astral, thereby having an impact upon our lives in the physical. It is really a two-way street. That's why C.C. Zane recommends that at least 50% of metaphysical studies should be focused on directing positive thoughts and empowering those thoughts by inducing positive emotions around them. This is how we as humans can exercise our will, the will of the Magus. Do we have free will? To an extent, we do. But we are all subject to circumstances over which we have no control. Do we have limited free will then? Yes, we can exercise our limited free will to manifest what we want in our lives and dismiss what we don't want in our lives to some degree. We also have the power to adjust our attitude about our circumstances. Sometimes we're not in control of our circumstances, but we can always assume a positive attitude about whatever our circumstances happen to be. Finally, we have the opportunity to change. But we've talked about change, haven't we? Most people don't like change and will resist it at all costs. What is the old adage? The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. People must be mad because that's what they do all the time. In the astral, there is no time and space. Life patterns exist in the past, present, and future. Therefore, we as diviners can see a pattern, and that pattern will continue unless the querent does something to change the pattern. And we know that that probably is not going to happen. An example is substance abuse. When a person is involved in this type of lifestyle, their life pattern is pretty predictable. Loss of family, loss of health, lack of respect and self-respect, loss of job, lack of money, lack of true loving relationships, and perhaps criminal activity. Unless the person in question gets clean and sober, these conditions will not change. They will probably just get worse. Most people under the influence of substance abuse, however, are in denial about their addiction in the first place, and secondly, lack the tremendous will and determination required to get and stay free of substances. It requires dropping all of your friends for one thing, and sometimes even spouses and family members. Another example, a woman is in an abusive marriage. Of course, that relationship is probably not going to change unless she leaves it. But in order to leave it, she risks perhaps a loss of home, personal effects and financial security, loss of marriage to someone she thinks she still loves, custody hearings for children, loss of pets, and even the loss of her own life in some instances. It's a vicious cycle. These examples I use only because they are so cut and dried. The idea is that from the astral, patterns are received that will convey to you through the cards what has happened, what is happening, and probably, and I stress probably, will happen. Fate is not written in stone, nor is it written in the cards. There are many variables. When people change their minds and their hearts, and they make decisions in their life to make change, then things change. But I'll tell you what, if things have been going like this, and like that, and like this, and like that, they'll probably go like this, and like that again. And that's how we can see it. Oops. Did I skip one? Okay. But how does this information reflect in the cards? How does this information get into the cards? It is a process called psychokinesis. Psycho means mind, and kinesis means movement, or movement through the power of the mind. Uri Geller, for example, used to bend spoons as part of his psychic show back in the 70s. That was a dramatic example of how the mind can move or affect physical objects. As we're shuffling and cutting the cards and thinking about our question, our subconscious mind is at work in the astral looking at those life patterns, and they're gleaning information. Our subconscious mind then works to arrange the cards as we are shuffling them in such a way as to reflect the information we are receiving. This process of psychokinesis is a demonstration of as above, so below, and it is the basic mechanism for all forms of divination, whether one is reading clouds, smoke, tea leaves, runes, bones, animal trails, or pickup sticks. It's all exactly the same. All of these forms of divination work in the same manner through this method of psychokinesis. We learn from veiled Isis that it is possible to train our subconscious mind by repeating positive affirmations. Our subconscious mind does not know the difference between what our conscious mind discerns as what is either good or bad for us. It will work towards what we discern as good as easily as it will work towards what we discern as bad. There are 2 points to remember when training the subconscious mind. The use of positive words, that's number 1. And number 2 is consistency. To get in touch with our own power of psychokinesis, we use ritual. And by that I mean the use of something that puts us in communication with our subconscious minds. And that something must be used consistently. Many of us enjoy the smell of incense or the sound of relaxing music, candles, essential oils, flowers, and deep rhythmic breathing, prayer, or meditation. Any combination of these dial-up tools will work to connect you with your subconscious mind as you do the same thing, the same way, every time you are preparing to read tarot. This will train your subconscious mind to know what to expect and, more importantly, to know what to do. And that is to get in touch with the astral plane and to accumulate information about the question at hand. In other words, you can dial up the astral by developing your own personal ritual and sticking with it. Does anybody remember the psychic John Edward? He had a show. Oh, yeah. He was awesome. And he wrote 2 books, and I read both of them. But in the first book, I read that what he did before he got on the show every single time was say the rosary. He was a very devout Catholic, and for him, that mantra of just saying those prayers, he would say them really fast and, be alone. He had his ritual, and just the feel of the beads and repeating the prayers over and over again, he said he could feel himself lifting his vibrations up. And he said being a psychic was a little bit like communicating with someone in a pool. In underwater example. You can only stay down there for so long, and then you have to come up. Like the person from the other plane could only stay so long, and he could stay only so long, and they, quickly meet and then move on.
He did everything quickly.
He did everything quickly. So the question is, will you feel it? Will you feel anything while you're shuffling and cutting the cards? Some of us do feel a tingling sense running up our fingers or our arms. Others will feel a sense of peace. Others will feel nothing, but it's still working. It's still working, that sense of psychokinesis. Shuffling and cutting the cards moves the senses into the astral, picking up the information, bring them back to you through the organization of the cards as you're shuffling and cutting them. That is psychokinesis in action, and that is how divination works. Are there any questions at this point about divination? When I first learned about this, I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. To me, it makes a lot of sense, and that's how I feel. When I'm shuffling the cards, I feel like the cards are moving according to what my subconscious mind tells them to do, and I trust that process. And that's really important in reading tarot, to trust the process.
Did it take you a while to develop that trust?
Yeah, it sure did, because when I first started reading, I told you about the experience of not trusting, and I would keep doing it over and over again until I got the answer I wanted. And that's, what many of us do when we first start out. But I think now I'm over that. But yeah, it takes some people to get around that.
I don't necessarily feel like I'm doing it. I ask the universe to do it. Then I think that's what kicks in my own participation.
Sure.
Subconscious mind. But I don't need to feel like the agent. Sometimes I'm better off if I set myself aside
right.
or assure the person who's shuffling the cards that the cards that want to be pulled up for them are what they're going to pick.
Exactly. Having said all that about divination, and before I go on to formulating questions, I want to just point out that psychologist Dr. Art Rosengarten and I have something in common. I don't know the man, but we both believe the same thing. We both believe that while the cards can be used for divination, they are very effective also for self-exploration, problem solving, and spiritual reflection, and most compelling in examining a person's present circumstance. To sum up, like other oracles such as the I Ching, tarot offers three things. Tarot, translates a problem or question into images, which is sometimes more obvious than words or thoughts. The tarot mirrors unconscious forces that stem from our physical plane experiences, and the tarot reflects communication from our inner spirit or higher self. And I just wanted to impart that, it's not always divining the future. You had said during lunchtime that you do sort of a present thing. It's not always about divining the future. I find that tarot cards are really the greatest for problem solving or really understanding the nature of a problem. And so now we're going to move into formulating questions. And this is probably one of the hardest parts of tarot reading, formulating your question. This might seem like a simple task, but believe me, because it is the question that really gets to the core of the matter, and in many instances, the question is half the battle. Sometimes when I'm struggling with some vague uneasiness, I feel as if I've almost solved my problem just by figuring out what it is. The right question can do that for us. So let's talk about questions and ask how to make them as effective as possible within a tarot reading. The first type of question that we want to reformulate is the negative question. These are easy to recognize. They usually begin with why can't or why doesn't. For example, why can't I get that job I want? Or why doesn't my boyfriend call me? Why am I such a loser? These are examples of negative questions. They presume a negative. Counter negative assumptions and rephrase the question. For example, what surrounds my perfect employment? Rather than, why can't I get that job? What surrounds my perfect employment? Or how can I live a more constructive life? Or what are my strengths? Or what are my weaknesses at the workplace? They have to be separate questions. And just because you want to know about your weaknesses doesn't mean that's a negative question. It's perfectly acceptable to want to define what your weaknesses are. What do I need to know about my relationship with my boyfriend? Instead of, why isn't he calling me? The next type of question that we have to deal with are vague questions. Sometimes the question posed is not really on target. For example, what about my relationship? Well, what about it? If the question posed is vague, then the answer is apt to be vague too. Try to see if you can come up with a real issue. For example, how can I strengthen my relationship with so-and-so? Or are there obstacles in this relationship that I need to be aware of? Or what challenge does this relationship bring to me? When questions are difficult to pinpoint with tarot and are best reworded. For example, when will I meet my husband? Or when will I come into money? These questions are best reworded into how questions, like how do I attract the man of my dreams? Or how can I create monetary wealth in my life? I went to, I was reading it was a party one time. It was actually for 10,000 Waves. And this guy came up to me, and there was a whole string of people there. I had to read over bands and everything. It was just horrible. But anyway, You know, and what's your question? Oh, yeah, okay. I mean, it wasn't private by any means. There were people all around. It was just horrible. Anyway, so this guy comes up to me, and he says, when am I going to find a real love in my life? And I said, oh, you know, we're not too good with when questions, and can we try to reword it? And, you know, he really wanted to know when. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot, and I just trusted in the process. And the cards came up that this fellow was a real partier, you know, and I just got the sense of abuse and drugs and, you know, this and that from the cards. And I looked at him and I said, when you start partying as hard as you do, when you stop trying to look for your lovers in all the wrong places like bars. And he was stunned. But you know what? He said, well, you're probably right. You know, so even though I thought to myself, well, I really can't address this exactly when, the cards told me when. So I thought that was really kind of an interesting thing. Some queers ask questions about other people, and I kind of have a bugaboo about this, and this is just my own thing. It doesn't have to be yours. But tell me what's going on with my child, or what's going on with my coworker. In these instances, I try to formulate the question so that it directly relates to the querent. For example, have I done something to upset my coworker, or how does my coworker view my work? Is there anything I need to be aware of with my child? Parentheses, as a parent. Or, how can I be a better parent? To summarize, frame the question in a positive light and make sure that the question is proactive and empowering. Be specific as you can when formulating questions. Finally, make sure that your querent is concerned about themselves, only themselves, and not others, unless the question affects them personally. It is not ethical for a tarot reader to snoop into the private lives of others. Again, that's just my personal thing. People do it all the time. Matter of fact, most women, the first thing that comes out of their mouths is, what's my daughter doing? You know, they want to know what's going on with their children. You know, I mean, you can't blame them. You know, but that's where they're going most of the time. So the reason why, and it's so interesting, we talked about this for lunch at lunchtime a little bit today. There are several reasons why people come to get a reading. The first one is just for fun. You know, they're at a party, or their friend is going to get a reading, and they say, "Oh, okay, I'll go get a reading too." And really, they don't really care they don't really have anything in mind to ask. They're just there for the experience.
It's a novelty.
It's a novelty to them. It's entertainment. They think of it as a form of entertainment. The second type of person wants to test the tarot reader. You know, I'm not going to tell you the question. You figure out the question. Yeah, let's trick the tarot reader game. And I have a solution for that, and that's the horoscope spread, which throws out a big hoop. We'll talk about that later. And then there are those people that really have a problem, and that's why they're coming to a tarot reader. They've tried to talk to their friends, they can't figure it out, so they're going to go to a tarot reader to see and hope if something can be gleaned by a reading. And that's when it's important, I think, to sit down and figure out what the problem is and ask the correct question. And once you get the question, then you can decide what spread you want to use, because there are certain questions that go with certain spreads. Now, other tarot readers approach this differently, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just teaching you my way. You know, everyone can do it their own way. So we have theoretically figured out what the problem is and formed the question, and now we're choosing a spread. In this class, I will be teaching you the advantages of a 1-card, 3-card, 5-card, and 7-card spreads, and touching on the 12-card horoscope spread. In the tradition of Tarot, however, the availability of different spread designs is literally infinite, and there are many, many books on the spreads, on the subjects of spreads. There are those readers who only use one spread, and there are a couple advantages to that practice. For one thing, the reader will always know how best to formulate the question to suit the spread. Secondly, the reader has a chance to learn how the cards are read in the different positions of the spread that they use all the time. There are some readers who like to use every single card in the deck in a spread, and other readers who prefer to do only one card readings. I find personally that less is more, but more than one card is better. That's just me. Some readers, like myself, have become familiar with the use of several different spreads in order to accommodate the type of question posed. On rare occasions, I will invent a spread to serve a special question. One-card readings are great for beginners and advanced readers alike. When I read on the internet between 2000 and 2002, I was only allowed to use one-card spreads. I thought this was a ridiculous notion at first, but came to realize that a lot could be gleaned from only one card. Beginners can get to know their deck by doing a one-card reading every day and seeing how the card plays out. Daily questions that may be asked are, what is in store for me today? What will my day be like? What message will I receive today? What will today teach me? How can I best face my challenge today? All these questions are on your handout, tarot exercises, so you don't have to write them down. Mix these questions up daily according to how you feel and make up questions for yourself as they occur to you. Or you can ask the same question every day as you like. Keep a journal of the card you turn up, what it means and what it means to you within the context of your question and the context of your day. The journal doesn't have to be involved, just a few words. You can even jot down a few lines on a separate calendar, and this is what I used to do. I bought a calendar that had the little squares in it, and I would pull a card. I'd ask, do my whole ritual thing. I'd decide on a question. I'd pull a card. I'd note it down, which card it was, and whether it was right side up or reversed. I'd write down the question, and then I'd go around the day looking for my answer, based on that card, and try to figure out what that card was trying to tell me. And then I would go home in the evening and jot a note or two about how the card expressed itself during my day. And another thing that you can do with one-card readings, by the way, is if they're right side up, the answer is yes, and if they're upside down, the answer is no. And I used to do that a lot when I was reading on the net. So that works too. After a while, when you're doing this calendar exercise and this journaling exercise, you will realize that the meaning of the card will come up in subtle ways. Maybe through a snippet of conversation or a song you hear on the radio. Gonna be a hard day tonight. When did that find? The feeling of the card may be expressed through a piece of artwork you see or the kind of day you had at work. Another phenomenon becomes clear. There will be times when the same card will come up repeatedly for a matter of days or even weeks. Then suddenly a different card will surface regularly. These cards, of course, reflect the types of energies that are cycling in and out of your life. I was stunned at how many times I would shuffle the cards and cut them, and I'd turn the sage over and over and over and over. And it would happen. I'd say, my gosh, didn't I shuffle these cards? There's something wrong. Are there 10 sages in here? I got the death card repeatedly for many, many weeks one time. Believe me, it worked out. I mean, my life was falling apart. It was, all the old stuff was out, making way for a whole new lifestyle. So that energy was flowing through my life at that time. And no matter how many times I cut and shuffle those cards, the death card would come up. Or some card like it, you know. For those difficult passages in life, there is a wonderful question offered by Christiane Northrup, MD. Ask, what is the highest teaching available to me through this situation? I've always added the word today to that question. What is the highest teaching available to me today through this situation? And believe me, that one card spread has served as my bridge over troubled waters on many, many occasions. One card spreads are also great for characterizing or defining a problem. It puts the problem in a picture form and gives you insight as to what the problem is. You know, I was doing a reading for myself, I'll confess, on anger the other day. And I came up with the Two of Cards, the Two of Cups. And the spiritual meaning for the Two of Cups is Hydra, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got this big monster with all these ugly heads everywhere, just awful. And it was Iolaus, right? Hercules' sidekick that was trying to kill Hydra. And he'd slice off a head and 3 more heads would sprout up. And he'd slice off another head and another 3 heads would sprout up. And it was only when Iolaus cauterized where he had cut that energy was sublimated into a different area. It wasn't allowed to sprout up again. It was sublimated to go somewhere else. So what I got out of that is that my anger is it's like a monster. Everybody realizes that their anger is a monster. It sprouts up in unexpected places. Aren't you glad that was a staple? It sprouts up, and what I have to do with my anger is I have to turn it in a different direction. I have to understand it differently, or I have to sublimate it into maybe compassion. And this is really working. I mean, this is really working at your problems. This is where you can get insight. If you're having a personal problem with some aspect of your character, you can define what that is by pulling one card and looking at it. It's really good at characterizing a problem. So other things you can do with a card is sleep with a card under your pillow and see what dreams transpire. This exercise has never worked for me. But it has been recommended to me by others many times who say that it works. Well, I don't know what they're drinking or smoking before bed. But, give it a shot. Try it. Another exercise you can do with one card is meditate on a card. Now, this one does work for me. You sit in front of it, and you just stare at it for a while, and you imagine that you're walking into the card. Just walking right into it. And you see the big card all around you, and you're just this little thing in the card. And you interview the characters in the card. It's really fun. And you ask them questions like, what are your responsibilities? Where are you going? Why are you in such a hurry? This may sound crazy, but this one really works. And of course, the answers that you get are the answers from your higher power. and they're the answers all about yourself, probably.
That's a great idea.
It's a lot of fun.
You can also dialogue with the inanimate objects in the card.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You know, you can even walk into a card and say, "Oh, look, you little snails, what do you mean?" You know, you can just be like Alice in Wonderland, really, you know, and play that wonderful game and just really interact with the cards in your imagination. So anyway, does anybody else have any? What are you doing over there?
I'm just seeing if I can look into the card more.
Oh,
to
okay.
Perceive.
Oh, okay.
She's walking in.
She's walking in. Okay, Mercury, good on you. Can anybody think of any other one-card exercises that they might have had experiences with? I love to collect these ideas, so I'm just asking for feedback.
Well,
I'm doing pretty well
dream
on time
technique.
right now, by the way.
A
Yeah.
dream technique, I learned you can apply this to cards or your dreams, not just dialoguing with characters and inanimate objects, but actually changing seats with them. Like, first I'm saying to the Queen of Wands, this is how I feel about you. I perceive you as such and such a way. And then I hand my pen to her, and she says, I'm the Queen of Wands, Laura, and I come to tell you.
Oh, yeah,
Get it from
Right.
both ways.
excellent. That's wonderful. That's the kind of interaction that really helps in these kind of experiments.
So can I just ask, so you're talking to the...
First I'm telling her of my take on her,
Right.
and then I hand her the pen.
Yeah.
And just let one word at a time come into my consciousness and write down what I hear. So I don't have to make sense of it ahead of time or think about it, criticize it, edit it. Just let it come through and listen.
And you can also change seat with her.
That's the idea.
You
Yeah.
can sit as her
Yeah.
and speaking to yourself.
You can even set it up physically so that when you're sitting in this chair, you're you talking to her, and then you get up and turn around. And it really helps to do that.
Right.
You can do that in person, but you can also do it internally.
Exactly.
Right,
I love that.
right. And
It's the same, and you can also do that with the
card.
innate
Yeah.
And then
objects.
just
Like you can
interacting
become the
with
chair,
everything.
you can
Exactly.
become the pentacle, and then the pentacle speaks to Laura sitting or Via
Exactly.
sitting there.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
Gestalt
great
technique.
idea. Yeah, it's really a wonderful idea. And, you know, it's just shocking what comes up. I mean, you know, you walk out of these cards and you say, wow. You know, you have to write all this stuff down, you know.
Very helpful. to
Yeah,
write.
very
Or
helpful to
even,
write it down.
have a
Or
tape
just speak
recorder.
it and tape it, yeah. But it's
You-
really helpful.
Do you take notes then as you're doing
You know, usually I don't. I treat it like I wait till the end usually because I'm involved in there and I just pay attention. It's like having a dream, but the minute you come out of the dream, you write things down. That's how I do it. Yes.
There's a Michael from Los Angeles who says, the night before I drew one angel card that said teaching and learning and laughed out loud the night before this class.
Oh, really? Oh, that's fun.
Out loud. And Aaron says, how can you tell whether the meanings you're pulling up apply to you or apply to the person you're reading for?
They usually
Well,
apply to both.
well, they could. You know, in a great grand sense, they might. But I would answer that question if you're doing a reading for someone, it applies to the querent. It doesn't apply for you, to you. Yeah. I mean, it could if you happen to have the same problem, but, you know. You know.
I think the focus when you're setting up the reading needs to be on the querent.
It's on the,
not on you.
yeah, it's
your
on the
intention.
querent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your intention is
Maybe
for-
he's saying he's doing a reading for himself, but he's asking about another person. How do you know if it applies to you in that situation or the other person that you're wondering?
Well, you know, that's why the questions are so important, that you would have to say, you know, what do I need to know about this other person? Right. And that's why you have to be so clear about your questions. And you have to write them down before you do your reading. Otherwise, problems just like this come up. You're unsure about how to relate the cards, whether they relate to you or the other person.
And we don't
Yeah.
have any business reading for anyone but the person in front of us. Really.
Yeah, really and truly.
It's not ethical for us to, pretend to be reading some. They should be shuffling the cards if we're going to be reading their cards.
Well, I look at it this way, if you're curious about whether you should begin a relationship with someone, for example. I had a gal come to me, and she wanted to start a relationship with actually another woman. And I got the Fool, dropping off and the precipice, or about to drop off the precipice. And I said, I don't know. This might not be what you expect. Let's put it that way. And so I guess my point is that you can read about another person, but only as it pertains to you.
That's the point.
Only as it pertains to the querent. Or only as it pertains to yourself, if you're reading for yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's go on to 3-card readings. Using 3-card in spreads. I love 3-card readings because they're very versatile. So I've turned up these 3 cards because I want to show you how many different ways we can look at these cards. But the first thing I want to talk about is another exercise, and that is turn up 3 cards without asking a question and make up a story by using your own imagination. And this is a lot of the times where tarot readers, or learning to be a tarot reader, have a problem. Is it, how do I make these cards connect with each other? How can I make them link? What do they mean next to each other, and that sort of thing. This is a great exercise for doing that. Just sit there, cut your cards, and keep turning 3 cards over at a time. And make up a story with beginning, a middle, and an end. Before we talk about the possibilities here, I should mention that in Egyptian tarot, the cards are read from right to left. In other words, the past card is on the far right, the present card is in the middle, and the future card is on the left. Now, this seems totally counterintuitive to how we read, because we read from left to right. But Hebrew and Egyptian is read from right to left, and so we read in that direction. And this is very peculiar at first, but believe me, you get used to it faster than you would think. Now I have to find where I am in my notes because I went off.
Right to left.
Right to left. So here we have 3 cards that I pulled from the Brotherhood of Light deck. I did not pose a question, but we will make up an answer. Let's begin with Arcanum 14, the Alchemist, which falls in the position of the past. And I'll use my pointer here for those who have forgotten. This card represents a perfect combination of male and female energies, a perfect alchemy, a time of healing and regeneration, and a slow and patient process. In this case, because I see an exchange of money or ideas and a new business opportunity, here would be, money and ideas and a new business opportunity, I'm going to pretend that the question pertains to a new business. I'm going to suggest that the beginning of the story revolves around a symbiotic partnership that has set off a creative spark. The 10 of coins in the center represents the present. This card indicates a give and take relationship, reciprocity, a chance that inventiveness will bring financial gain and mental inspiration. The card also represents money gained through associates and an opportunity to gather and direct energies. All of these key phrases, by the way, can be found in Blending Astrology, Numerology, and Tarot by Doris Chase Doan. I just went in the book and started looking at the definitions and putting them together. Spread the cards, look them up, look at the definitions, and make up a story. All that creative energy and influx of resources will inspire a new business opportunity and plenty of enthusiasm which will come up in the future as represented by the Ace of Scepters. Let's take these cards and make up another story. Diligence and patience is rewarded by mental inspiration that results in a new benefit to the querent's reputation. Let's do something else with the cards, this time asking the question, who am I, what do I need, and how will I get it? You are patient, creative, diligent, and generally harmonious by nature. Stubbornness may get in your way, we're still over here, stubbornness of Taurus may get in your way from time to time. You need a sense of give and take, plenty of mental inspiration, and perhaps a change of viewpoint. You get that by engaging in a business activity of a mental nature, a startup opportunity to use your creative skills, or taking a business trip for an influx of new ideas. It's really a very simple exercise. It just takes a little time to sit down, pull the cards, look them up, and start choosing from the different lists.
Allie?
Yes.
We have a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you also deal the cards from right to left?
Yes.
Deal
Yes.
them right to left.
Yes. We sure do. A 3-card spread is also great for this, that, and the other thing. Now, this one, it's funny because that person, whoever it was, just asked the question. I do a this, that, and the other thing spread, and usually when I do a this, that, and the other thing, I go right, left, and in the middle. So it's not always from right to left. You can change it up the way you want. But generally, when we're doing readings, like the 3-card readings or 5-card readings or 7-card readings, we read from right to left and we deal from right to left. But now I'm going to give you an exception to that because it's my invention, okay? And we all have a prerogative to be inventive in this activity of reading tarot. This, that, or the other thing spread. Say you have a choice to make between 2 options. Decide what position will represent which choice, and then throw in a 3rd option, which is always a good idea. Say that your choice is, because you know what? Sometimes we think it's either this or that, but it really never is this or that. It's always this, that, and there's probably something else. So we can't be limited by our choices, right? Okay. So say your choices are between 2 jobs, and your 3rd option is the card in the middle. That's the other thing. In this case, the job on the left, represented by the Ace of Scepters, indicates a startup position involving a lot of mental activity and perhaps business travel, because it's an ace, right? Your other job offer, as represented by Arcanum 14, appears to be a job of greater significance. Why? Because it's a major arcanum. It's greater significance. Maybe it would offer more stature or power, but it might have a lot of routine in it because Taurus is about routine. But your working environment looks to be harmonious. And
Taurus could also be stability.
and stable, exactly. Which may, so it may be the perfect match for the querent. The 3rd option is represented by the 10 of coins and suggests seasonal work and new methods to control the budget. Doesn't look good.
Temporary work because you didn't take the right time.
That doesn't look like a very good option to me. And finally, let's look at one more way to look at a 3-card spread. We'll call this the problem solver spread. It begins with the root of the problem. The middle card represents how the problem manifests itself, and the card on the far left represents a possible solution to the problem. So in this case, we have to look at the negative aspects of these cards. The root of the problem, as represented by Arcanum 14, would be money obtained from plotting routine, which manifests as alternating financial loss and gain. In other words, financial instability, represented by the 10 of coins. And finally, the possible solution, represented by the Ace of Scepters, is an analysis of personal affairs, new activity on the job, or a new business venture involving more aggressive mental activity. Not as boring as this one.
So where did you get analysis on that?
I pulled it right out of Doris Chase Doan.
Personal affairs,
Aries, personal, yeah. And also the Ace, the Magus has some analysis. They have planning and analysis involved.
Okay, so the Mercury aspect.
Yeah, in Mercury. It's a Mercury aspect.
So what you say finally, analysis of personal affairs and putting energy into a new venture?
Yeah, putting energy into a new venture involving more aggressive mental activity, which would be all Mercury stuff.
And
Yeah.
that Mars influence.
Yeah. So you can see how versatile 3 cards are, and you can make up all sorts of spreads with 3 cards and have a lot of fun. Make up a story. Who am I? What do I need? How will I get it? Problem solving, this, that, or the other, just for starters. Oh, we'll have fun with this. This is the yes, no, maybe spread. And I want to tell you that in your packet, you have a yes and no spread handout. You can focus on this. And it has blank spaces in it. It tells you what all the positions are in the spread, and it has blank spaces where you can write the cards down, and you can write the comments, and you can say who you did it for and the date, and by, I guess that would be yourself. So these are handy to make copies of and keep blank copies around so you can make records of your readings. This is a popular spread around the Church of Light and with me because it can be used to give a quick yes, no, maybe answer and also provide some information. This is the only spread where all the cards are turned up at once to reveal the answer. The idea is that the yeses are counted, the nos are counted, and whichever comes out ahead is the answer. But maybes are also possible. Darn it. The card in the middle gets 2 points, and the other 4 cards get 1 point each. So let's look at the slide.
So if it's upside down, it's a no, right?
Yeah,
Right, by definition.
so if it's up, right, if it's upside down, it's a no. If it's right side up, it's a yes. So first of all, we don't have a question here, but can anybody guess what this spread is talking
I think it's
about?
about a relationship.
There it is. Yeah, that's good. Excuse me. Let's count up the points. We have 3 cards right side up for a total of 3 yeses. And we have 2 cards reversed. Here they are and here we are. But the one in the middle gets 2 points. So it's a tie. So we have a maybe. Now this is kind of a trick question here. So I'm just doing this for illustration. Maybe is always a possibility, and it just means that the outcome is not certain or it's too early to talk. But let's take a look at the story. In the distant past, there appears to be a choice involved. Perhaps one of our people had to choose between 2 lovers. In the recent past indicates that in this case, in this case, there was a lucky choice in love, or the person is lucky in love. In the middle, we have a king reverse, and that means what?
A queen.
That means queen.
Cancer woman.
A Cancer woman, right. So that's
Or
probably,
someone of that temperament.
or someone of that temperament is what it means. Yeah, some emotional lady. So that's probably the lady in the love affair. Next to her, we have a queen reversed. What does that mean?
A man.
Scorpio male.
It means a man with a Scorpio temperament or a Scorpio type personality. So he must be her lover. Even though we have a maybe spread, 2 of our reversals are simply indicating sex changes. So they're really not no's in this case. And with a card like this in the end, I would probably say that they're going to get married and live happily ever after. So, you know, you kind of have to look at what the cards say every once in a while. The yes, no, or maybe spread may appear to say one thing, but actually may be saying something else. But you have to read them. Sometimes it's clear, quite clear, that it's either yes or no.
Was this a real tarot spread?
No, I made it
You
up.
just made it up?
I wanted to illustrate a point.
Okay.
I wanted to make a point, because readings like this come up a lot. And you say, well, wait a minute, I got a maybe. But then when you look at it and you think, oh, well, that's not really a maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's not a maybe
Because
the
these are
reversal-
just showing sex changes. They're just showing the temperaments. They're upside down, but it's just saying, hey, this isn't a man with an emotional temperament. This is a woman.
Well, and the final card would influence
And the final
your
card tells us,
decision too, wouldn't it?
yeah, the final card tells us, no, this is a happy relationship. So you kind of have to look at the whole thing to make a decision about it.
So,
One thing about-
if you were the man or the woman in this, if you identified, say, with the king who became female in the central position, and you brought forth your moodiness, your emotionality to look at, and if the queen were reversed and that brought forth the man who is more certain of what he wants, that Scorpio I desire question, I mean, would you be bringing things like this into the consideration? Would you be saying, I'm probably less sure of what I want than he is in this situation, and trust that our watery natures will coexist well because he has more persistence and certainty in his desire?
Sure.
Are you reading that kind of thing into it? I'm trying to make sense of.
Well, you
how
can. You could do that. If say the fellow was asking you the question, you could say, well, you know, here's your nature and here's her nature, and you can talk about their natures and perhaps discuss that sort of interaction
And
that
you
they
talk
may
about
have.
her
And
nature
he
as
says,
the central card
right.
and his nature as the
Right.
queen reverse.
Exactly. You could talk about that, sure. But ultimately, the result looks like that they will resolve their difficulties, or he will, you know, it looks as if, from what the cards say, that they will get along, ultimately.
Yeah, I see the final
That
card,
they
but
will
I was
find-
trying to make sense of, you know, what you were doing with the sort of neutralization of the negatives.
You want to read each card in each position. So yes, you could say, you know, this must be, you know, the person in the middle is the woman, let's say, and say the woman's reading the card or asking you the question. You could talk to her about her personality or how she feels, how she seems to be in this relationship.
And
That she's emotional about it, in other words.
The cards would seem to indicate that
Yeah.
the woman was more vacillating in what she wants to me than the man, because the man's the Scorpio and the woman's the movable Cancer.
I think the bottom line is, when you're reading for a client, a lot has to do with who's sitting in front of you. You know,
And
what they're
they
telling
relate.
you and
What
what they're
yeah.
relating to.
Another,
and,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you're going to apply it to the person sitting in front of you. You can't, otherwise, you can't just speculate, because you would read the same cards differently for a different client.
Sure, and you'd be asking them questions. as you
Right.
go along.
Vicki, did you have something
Well, I
to
was
say?
going to say, wouldn't position have something to do with this too? Because what that might suggest to me is that, well, the issue, right now, their personalities seem to be the issue. It's in the present. It's in the near future. There's a concern over how their personalities are going to, or their temperaments
Are gonna jive.
There maybe have been some issues that have arisen.
Exactly.
And that
Right.
in
So-
the past, everything was, oh, this is great, you know,
Yeah.
made a good decision, but oh,
Right.
well, maybe something came up.
Right.
And it's bringing their temperament into.
And it's making the querent maybe wonder, oh, did I make the right choice?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's where it stems
Especially
from.
with that Neptune 5 of Cups in there.
Right, sure. Well, all of these things are something you would have to discuss with your querent. Nevertheless, the future card indicates that this relationship has a pretty good chance of succeeding. See, so that's the final
and where
outcome.
it's starting from indicates
And
that
it's-
too.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
good to, I'm really glad you gave this example, because the concept that the upside down doesn't necessarily mean no, because what it could mean is it's just showing you
Uh-huh.
The issue.
It's
how else
showing you
is
the
it gonna show you if
personality.
Cancer female. It's not going to show you that that's the way it has to do it. So
Uh-huh. That's the only way it has to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was very helpful to me.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you like it.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on now to
Yeah.
the 7-card spread. Again, I'd like to point out that you have a handout for the 7-card spread. It shows you the positions of the card. It gives you a place to write all the cards down and a place to make notes, a place to write the question, and a place to give the name of your querent and the date of the reading. So make copies of these and use them as record keeping. This is also called the Magic 7 spread. And I already told you about the handout. The 7-card spread is one of the most popular spreads in the Church of Light tradition because it accommodates the most practical form of question, which is what surrounds questions. What surrounds my job offer? What surrounds my new relationship? What energies surround me right now? This spread will offer a good look at all the aspects of a question and is the Church of Light answer to the classic Celtic cross. Are you all familiar with the Celtic cross spread? Yeah, it's been around a long time. And this is our answer to the Celtic cross because it really does cover all the bases. You will note that it looks like the Church of Light emblem in that it has 2 pyramids, one pointing up and one pointing down. And the card where the Yahi Bahe is the result card. That's the 7th card. Let me move on to a new slide here. In the first position, in the highest point of the first pyramid, we have the past of the question. This energy, as expressed in this position, can also be ongoing, as I have found to be true in many readings. In the second position, moving in a clockwise position, we have the present, and in the third point of the pyramid indicates the future position of the spread. So the upright position indicates the past, present, and future positions of the question. The fourth question, this one down here, is the biggie. The fourth question asks what the querent can do in this situation, and is an indication of just how much power the querent has, one way or the other. What ability does the querent have to control? What can the querent do? And it's a really great position in the spread. The fifth position indicates the general environment surrounding the question. How is it like at home if the question is about home, or if that's what it pertains to? Or what about work? How is what's going on at work? If I were going to do a Church of Light reading, I would get, what's the environment like here? In the sixth position, we have obstacles, or indicates a challenge or an obstacle in the situation. Sometimes it's not a card representing an obstacle, like, say, the Adept or the Sun. And in these instances, an obstacle is not necessarily present. May mean, well, you know, things look pretty good. You don't have any big evil cards in there, so go for it. When I'm reading in public, this spread seems to suit most people. And most of them, I can always suggest a reading that asks, you know, what energy surrounds Janet right now? And most of the time... and most of the time, this question is very well received. This spread is also great for problem solving, thinking outside the box, and making decisions. It can also be used for how can I questions. You know, how can I be a better parent? How can I be a better employee? How can I make my art more interesting? I mean, you can use it for all sorts of questions like that. Remember that the cards are turned over one at a time and not all at once, as in the yes-no spread. So what we do is we turn the card over, we turn, say, position 1 over, we read it, we interpret it, we record it, and then we go to card 2, flip that over, we read it, we record it, and then after it's all over, we have a sort of a look at what the whole package is. And of course, card number 7 is the result, or the outcome, which may lead you to another question or another reading. And finally, as far as I'm going to go today, and is the, I'm trying to change the wrong thing, the horoscope spread. This is Janet's favorite spread.
This is my favorite spread.
And this is great for astrologers. You also have a handout for this spread. It gives you the positions of the cards and which way you lay them down. You lay them down in a pattern and you pick them up in the opposite direction. So this can't be used, unfortunately, as a record keeper, but this explains how the spread works. This spread is laid down one way and picked up the other, revealing only one card at a time. I will demonstrate this card next week during the workshop. Christopher,
Allyn,
yeah.
What do you mean, lay down one way and pick up the other? You mean in the reverse order? Is that
Right,
what you mean?
exactly.
Or top to bottom?
Let me show you how it goes here. It's a little bit complicated. Here's card 1. Here's card 2, 3,
you do it in the
4, exactly, right?
Are you doing emanation? What are you doing?
5, 6, 7, 8,
Do you fall in
9,
triangles?
10,
No.
11, oops, 12. So it's all different triangles in there. But when you pick them up, you just pick them up this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you lay them down in a pattern, boom, 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 boom. And then you pick them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You pick them up like that. Have you ever done the horoscope spread?
Yeah, I have, but I've always had the book in front of me when
You
so
know,
I wasn't paying that. I guess I wasn't.
you know what? When you're first using this, you really do have to have the book in front of you, or you have to have this handout in front of you, because it's not an easy spread to lay down.
Well, it's got to be a logical. There's got to. What were the first ones that you laid down again? The first house.
It would be, let's see, the first house, the 10th house, the 7th house, and the fourth house.
Okay, so then it would be the angle.
Square.
Yes, it's the angles. It's the
Then
angles.
the next set would be the succeeding, would be second.
Yeah,
11.
probably, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the way it goes, because this is a series of triangles in here.
Okay.
And you're
so
hitting
we
all
need
the
to-
points.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but then you pick them up going according to the houses. First house, second
Their
house, third
sequence,
house, fourth
yeah,
house.
got it.
Right.
Okay.
So it is, you have to pay attention to this
Right.
one. But what's wonderful about the horoscope spread is, first of all, it's great for astrologers because they understand the houses and how all this works. And this spread is great for, we call it a hoop spread because what it does is it shows every single house and what's going on in that house. And in an instant, you can tell where the trouble spots are. Excuse me. I mean, it becomes so clear. The person's life just shows up in an image. And what this card is good for, you always have to, excuse me, I have to take a drink of water here. What this card is good for is introducing yourself as a tarot reader to a client who, and you want to do this. If you're going to have a regular client that comes in, you want to throw a hoop over their life, say from 6 months to a year. I don't go out any further than that. But, excuse me, you can demonstrate your ability as a tarot reader to explain every house, every section of their life, every aspect of their life. So if they're having difficulty believing that you're a reader, this will instigate trust, and they will believe you're a reader once you take them through all of these houses. And you can look at your querent and say, wow, you're having a lot of trouble at work. Or, you know, holy smokes, you might have some difficulties with your health. And you'll pick up on it right away because that's where all the major arcanums will be.
But do you want to be laying out negative suggestions in that? I believe that the human mind is 100% suggestible. So we have to be very careful about the ways in which we point out challenging areas.
Well, sure, but there's no harm in saying, you know, it looks like you're having some difficulty at work, or it looks like there may be some challenges at work. I mean, that's just reality. That's just the truth. We don't want to sugarcoat people, you know, too much.
Right. But
There's
we
a
do
fine,
want to be careful
right.
about how we suggest what we suggest.
Very definitely. But I'm telling you, if a person's having problems at work and you suggest to them that they're having problems at work, they're going to say, yeah, I am having problems at work. Right. If I'm wrong, totally wrong, you know, they may have some difficulty with that, but I've never seen that come up. In a 12-card reading, you can see where those trouble spots are. They just show up like big blinking lights. Mm-hmm. There's just no doubt. Yes?
I actually, I do a horoscope spread, but I don't lay them out that way. In fact, that's the first I think I've heard of that. I'm sure I studied it somewhere in the material, but I just lay it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 10. Yeah,
11, 12.
And then I put a 13th card in the center that I would leave down until the very end because that's their way out. So that's the reading that's the way but I just kind of made it up that way because I thought, well, I already know what houses mean in a horoscope spread, so I'll just do that, you know?
Exactly.
So it wasn't from learning to do that part of it from a book. I just did it because I was an astrologer.
Right.
So,
and you know what? That works.
It did.
That works.
And you're right on. It will show you exactly where the trouble spots are, and you mention that as you get to it. You mention it, and they're like,
"What? How did you know that?"
Oh my God, you're right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Why doesn't my 12th horoscope spread look different from the one illustrated?
Oh, because I'm just showing you that's the horoscope spread. That's just for the slide purposes.
Oh, okay.
That's just to demonstrate what the slide. That's not really the horoscope. So to sum up the hoop spread, it's great for developing a rapport with a new client. It's great for identifying where the problem areas are. It's great for birthday spreads. You know, it's wonderful for birthday spreads. Occasionally, if I'm reading, I have permission to read for someone, like my best friend or whatever, I'll just do a spread for them and I'll send it to them. Happy birthday. Here's what it looks like next year. You know, with just a quick outline. It's great for end of year spreads. You know, what will next year be like for me? But you do have to put a time limit on it, and I would say, you know, no more than a year, because you really can't go out that far. So, having said that, we're going to break for a half hour, so we'll be coming back. Okay, we'll see you back then.
Okay.